Briggs and Commissioner Clevey, hopefully, and possibly Commissioner Hookham will have a better sense at the time we take roll call. So in the meantime, I'm going to call the meeting to order, as I said, 6:06 p.m. on December 14th, 2021. My name is John Mursky. I'm chair of the Ann Arbor Energy Commission. And as chair, I'm calling this meeting to order. I am participating from my home here in Ann Arbor in Ward 2. Welcome again to the December 14th meeting of the Energy Commission meeting. This is an electronic virtual meeting in order to affect social distancing and to mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We will conduct this meeting similar to in-person meetings. Commissioners, during roll call, please indicate your current location. During the meeting, please remain on camera just as you would be visible during in-person meetings. Also mute your microphones when not speaking. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call one of the following toll-free numbers: 877-853-5247 or 888-788-0099 and enter the meeting ID number 937-6751-6819 on your phone. These numbers will remain the same for the entire year for Energy Commission meetings, and this information is also available on the published agenda in the public notices section of the city website and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN channel 16, AT&T channel 99, and online at www.a2gov.org/watchctn. Missy, would you please read the land acknowledgement?
Happy to, Chair Mursky. I acknowledge that the land the city of Ann Arbor occupies is the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Ottawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi and Wyandot peoples. I further acknowledge that our city stands, like almost all property in the United States, on lands obtained generally in unconscionable ways from Indigenous peoples. The taking of this land was formalized by the Treaty of Detroit in 1807. Knowing where we live, work, study, and recreate does not change the past, but a thorough understanding of the ongoing consequences of this past can empower us in our work to create a future that supports human flourishing and justice for all individuals.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on that briefly because just a little over a month ago, there was a study published online in the journal Science. It was co-authored by a professor in SEAS, and the analysis shows that Indigenous peoples in the United States have lost 98.9% of their historical land base since the European settlers first came to the United States, and more than 40% of tribes from those historical periods possess no federally recognized land. And this is relevant also in the context of this meeting, because a top line finding of the study was that because of systematic land dispossession, enforced migration, that Indigenous peoples here in the United States have much higher vulnerabilities due to climate change. And I just wanted to mention that. We read the land acknowledgement every meeting, but we often don't really stop to recognize what the implications are for the people that have been displaced. So next on our agenda is the land acknowledgement, or excuse me, we just did that, the roll call.
Excellent. Let me just transition over. Just a reminder, please state where you're calling from.
Missy, one thing, I just got a text from someone listening, and it says the CTN feed is glitching. Sounds like a fireworks factory underwater.
CTN is with us, and I think they know.
Okay, okay, very good.
Yeah, apologies for that. They're there's nothing I think any of us on this line can do.
Yep, okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Please state where you're calling in from. Chair Mursky.
Calling it John Mursky, present, calling from my home in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Hookham. Absent. Commissioner McComber.
Bridget Maycomber, calling from my home in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Cleavey. Let me just check really quick to make sure. Yeah, he's not in yet. Okay.
He said he was going to try to dial in by phone.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll check that. I'll need a separate minute to go and see if I see him. Commissioner Levin.
Sorry. Yes, I am participating from my home in Ann Arbor.
Vice Chair Colvin Garcia.
Present, calling in from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner McCoy.
Present, and I'm in State College, Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Commissioner George.
Present from Lansing, Michigan. I'm having some visual difficulties, so I'm going to see if I can work that out, but that's why I'm off camera at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Kerber.
Present. I'm in Auburn, Washington.
Thank you. Commissioner Overpeck.
I'm present, calling in from my home in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Juneau.
Present in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevenson. Absent. Councilmember Rodina.
Present here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Councilmember Briggs.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Okay, great. And then if we want to go on, I'll check and see if Commissioner Cleavey is with us. You have a quorum, regardless.
Just for all the other commissioners' knowledge, Commissioner Hookham indicated that he was traveling on business at this time, and that's why he's not able to join us tonight. We have an agenda that's posted on Legistar, and would appreciate it if we can have a motion to accept the agenda as posted, and then a second. Can I get a motion to do so? So moved by Councilmember Rodina, second from someone. From Commissioner McCoy. All those in favor say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. We also have minutes that were posted from our last meeting. Those are also on Legistar. Could I similarly have a motion to approve the minutes as posted and a second? Again, moved by Councilmember Rodina and seconded by Commissioner McCoy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? So we now move to public input. As mentioned, this is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. If you are watching on CTN, call 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 and enter the meeting ID 937-6751-6819. This information is also displayed in the meeting agenda and the video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one by indicating the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comment. comments?
Caller ending in 660.
Hello, my name is Chris Tebbins. I'm calling from Ypsilanti. I'm calling in support of Ann Arbor's effort or to look at the process of municipalization of the public of the utility. I'm a fan of municipalization. I think it gives better local control to the overall process of the power utility. It allows the power utility to be run by the local government and keeps that money invested in the community with the public power utility, providing more local jobs. In addition, I don't think that the way that we are going to be getting out of any future climate crisis is going to be driven by DTE. DTE is notoriously a dirty energy provider, has a very strong mix of coal in there, 59% of their energy coming from burning coal. Moving to municipalization will allow Ann Arbor to select a cleaner fuel source for themselves, relying more heavily on wind and solar, and it will provide a driving force in the local area to help combat climate change. So thank you very much, and I hope that you support the efforts for municipalization.
Thank you for your comments.
Caller ending in 847. Caller ending in 847. You can now unmute yourself.
Press *9.
We will come back. Caller
I
ending.
think it's *6 to unmute. Just
Caller ending in 662.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we hear you. Thank you.
Okay, cool. My name's Jack Suber. I'm a lifelong resident of Ann Arbor. I'm calling from Ann Arbor. And I'm also in support of municipalization and a municipalization survey that is not done by DTE. Like the previous caller said, DTE produces a lot of dirty power, 59% coal, and also municipalizing the power, like you said, will bring more jobs to set up such infrastructure and keep money in the community, as well as be likely more reliable. On average, municipal power takes less time to get back online when it's knocked out by extreme, weather events, which will be more likely due to climate change. And also, sorry, I had one other thing. DTE often upcharges has charged over $350 million in over than what could be saved if we used, more clean power, as coal is becoming less and less economically viable. And DTE is also an investor-owned utility, and it doesn't really represent, the beliefs and desires of the people around our community. So that's why I'm in support of municipalization. Thank you.
Thank you for calling in.
Caller ending in 847. Let's try again. Moving on, let's go to caller ending 228.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. My name is Greg Woodring. I am the president of Ann Arbor for Public Power, and I'm calling in as well as the other callers today, asking for you to support the municipalization resolution to fund to recommend a feasibility study. And I also hope that you will pass the recommended amendments that would more firmly define the feasibility study, as well as add a provision that any such feasibility study should factor in a just transition. I think it's extremely important, and this is the belief of Ann Arbor for Public Power generally, that we make sure that labor is thought of first and foremost among the people that will be affected in such a transition. Municipalization has a fantastic ability to help labor. We can help to expand the unionization of the solar contracting industry through large bulk buy programs and larger installation contracts that, if gone through the city, would fall under responsible contracting law, which would help give unions a much stronger chance to earn those contracts. Furthermore, we firmly believe that municipalization is really the only realistic path currently in front of us to reach 100% renewable power. Many of the other suggested pathways will certainly help. The SEU is a great idea that Ann Arbor for Public Power fully supports. It will help us in the time between when we are able to acquire the infrastructure to move more aggressively towards 100% renewable power. However, it is not capable of reaching 100% renewable power within the city. When the 820 plan was drafted, it was known that power purchase agreements were the only means of effectively reaching 100% renewable power. That's why CCA was called for. Currently, CCA is illegal in Michigan, and it is not likely to change anytime soon. If we want to be able to reach 100% renewable power, municipalization is the only realistic pathway for us to be able to execute power purchase agreements within the city of Ann Arbor. And so therefore, we should move forward with this, planning to take a dual strategy of getting as far as we can with the SEU and using municipalization to fill in the gaps. I really hope that you'll support this going forward. Over 1,100 people have signed a petition calling for the Energy Commission and City Council to fund such a study. And so I really look forward to the rest of this meeting. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments and for calling in.
Caller ending in 884. I'm sorry, 844. Caller ending in 844.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
All right, thanks. My name is Ian Robinson. I live at 3435 Brentwood Court in Ann Arbor. I'm speaking tonight as a long-term resident of Ann Arbor, but also as president of the Huron Valley Area Labor Federation, AFL-CIO, which represents about 18,000 union workers belonging to about 50 locals in 4 counties, Washtenaw County being one of them, and the one in which most of those members live and work. So I want to speak in favor of the 2 friendly amendments that have been proposed by Commissioners George and McCoy to the Municipal Utility Feasibility Study resolution that you'll be discussing later tonight. We think that it's critical to undertake this study, and that we want to make sure that the study is done in such a way that the municipal utility option is thoroughly explored and we can fully evaluate the pros and cons of that option. And I did want to just, one of those resolutions is specifically about ensuring that there's just transition language and intent and in the RFP that comes out of this process. And I just wanted to let folks know that Huron Valley Area Labor Federation has created a Just Transition Committee to work out the details of what exactly that concept of just transition means in particular instances, because as I'm sure you're all well aware, the devil is in the details in these sort of things. And the folks that do the work in the front lines, electricity and other aspects of construction and building of these projects have a command of those details of a sort that the rest of us really do not have. So it's going to be vital, I think, for us to develop proposals around how just transition can work in particular instances, aspects of energy transition, and to work closely with the city, the county, and other entities that are participating in making those changes. So thank you very much. Thank you for your service, and have a good evening.
Thank you for calling in.
Caller ending in 661. Caller ending in 661. All right, caller ending in 313.
Hi, can you hear me?
We do.
Okay, thank you. My name is Carol McFarland, and I live at 304 Montgomery Avenue. And I'm also calling tonight to ask the Energy Commission to pass the resolution from Ann Arbor for Public Power that recommends the City Council do a feasibility study for municipal electrical utility. I would like to see a thorough feasibility study done for the city-owned electric that completely replaces DTE. Other communities in Michigan have already done this, and I would urge the city to build ours 100% renewable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller ending in 020.
Hi, everyone. My name's Allie. I'm calling from 920 Civil in Ward 4. I am a social work student. I'm a master's student. I'm a member of GEO, and I'm on their climate caucus. I'm really happy to be calling in today. Thank you all for the work that you're doing. I also want to encourage you to support the two proposed amendments to the resolution. I would encourage you all to try to ensure that the feasibility study prioritizes the role of unionized labor. Part of what we're doing with our climate efforts is trying to make our community safe and just for everyone, and that really requires that we collaborate with unionized labor, because I really think that part of the well-being of our community means that people have access to jobs that pay well and treat people with dignity, and our climate efforts rely on this as well. I also just want to reiterate that disassociating with DTE is in the best interest of our community. I recently read a few articles that describe the immense amount of money that utility companies, including DTE, have received from the taxpayers in pandemic bailouts. So 9 companies, I'm reading from Bailout Watch, 9 companies received tax bailouts totaling $1.12 billion, and it would have cost just 9.4% of that bailout money to prevent every shutoff that was reported. I really don't think DTE, as a company who is endlessly pursuing profits, has our community's best interest in mind. And it also angers me that my taxes are going to a company like DTE instead of helping my neighbors who maybe can't pay their utility bill, or who are facing shutoff. So I just wanted to say those things. Yeah, I think that's all. Thanks for all your work on that.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Sorry, I'm trying to help Commissioner Clevey. Bear with me for a second.
It was 847 that didn't make it in, I think.
No, I have the list going. Don't worry. I just
Okay.
different screens at different times. Caller ending in 632.
Hey there, my name's Amir. I'm a UM grad student and a union member of GEO. I think the recent blackouts that we've seen across the state show the urgent need for public power in Ann Arbor. They do this in two ways, both by demonstrating the looming threat of climate change and our responsibility to take action, and also the failure of the private sector to make the investments needed to help keep our grid in good shape. So today I'm calling in to support both the feasibility study for municipalization and the amendments proposed by Commissioner McCay about the just transition. So I think it's incredibly important to include language about a just transition for workers in anything about municipalization of power. We're often presented with a false dichotomy between the interests of workers on the one hand and action to prevent or at least mitigate the effects of climate change on the other. We need to put the two together. And that's why I'm so glad to see Commissioner McCay's amendment. Truth is that workers will be put at far greater risk if we don't take action on climate change. But to do that, we need a plan that will make workers whole. We can't save the planet on the backs of workers. Ann Arbor is already a hard place to live for working people. It's incredibly unaffordable. Municipalization, taking the profit out of electricity, a basic necessity, will help make Ann Arbor a better place for working people to live. That's part of the reason why GEO supports municipalization, and even more so a municipalization that prioritizes and protects the needs of organized labor. We need the feasibility study, we need to put people before profit, and we need public power. Thanks very much.
Thank you for calling in.
I think it's worth taking a moment to celebrate Commissioner Clevey, who's about to join us.
While you were saying that, I got a message about 4 or 5 minutes ago saying it's still essentially impossible to listen on CTN. So CTN, if there's anything you can do from your end, we hope you're successful with your magic.
Excellent. Caller ending in 245. Caller ending in 245, you can unmute.
Okay, hello. Good evening, Energy Commissioners. I am Kathleen Murphy. I live at 315 Vista Street in Ann Arbor, Ward 5. I support Ann Arbor for Public Power, A2P2, because it has well-researched ideas for how a municipal electric utility, or MUNI, could best meet Ann Arbor's ambitious goal of reaching carbon neutrality by 2030. To do this, we need a feasibility study to see if a MUNI would be possible. A resolution to this effect was introduced at the Energy Commission meeting back in July, but the resolution to be voted on tonight no longer has language about a feasibility study for a possible MUNI in its resolve clauses. I believe, however, that this can be changed tonight, and it sounds like the two amendments that previous speakers have cited, if adopted, would solve this problem. The current resolution does articulate action on the Sustainability Energy Utility, or SEU. Work on the SEU should proceed. It is complementary to the work that a MUNI could do. They could work together. But an SEU is limited in what it can accomplish because of the limits on the number of roofs suited for microgrids. And it can't initiate power purchase agreements because it doesn't own the poles and wires. DTE does. Ann Arbor for Public Power wants to replace DTE, which many Ann Arbor residents view as unreliable in responding to power outages, like the one many of us experienced for 24 hours or more this past weekend. And residents are critical of DTE getting 70% of its power sources from fossil fuels. At a time when the whole world is trying to use less fossil fuel, DTE does not have timely plans for scaling back its use. Thus, fossil fuels would continue to be the source of Ann Arbor's energy, except for the SEU's installation of microgrids in those homes that opt for this new service. In summary, we need a feasibility study for munis so it can be fairly considered as an alternative to the investor-owned utility DTE that we have now, and so it can work together with the SEU. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller ending in 171.
Hello, can you hear me?
We do.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Susan Priller. I reside at 1356 Ravenwood in Ann Arbor. I am in Ward 5. I have been a homeowner in Ann Arbor for approximately 20 years, and I am calling in to support the Ann Arbor for Public Power project that has been undertaken in our area. I think really I can't add more to what other callers have already said, so I'm going to get to the bottom line. And the bottom line is that DTE cares about their bottom line. I am highly dissatisfied with the outages that we've experienced. In fact, the joke is, you know, I was completely anticipating that we would lose power in the windstorm. I was proven wrong, but I do have to say that over my course of time in residing here, that DTE is not doing a satisfactory job, and continuing to have them earning profits and in fact charging higher rates for electric power that is above the national average. Yeah, this is getting tiresome. I want to also encourage the members to vote on the amendments that has been proposed and other callers have mentioned. And I think that's all I have to say. So thank you very much to the council for your time, or to the committee for your time working on this project. Good evening.
Thank you for calling in. By the way,
ending.
I was just told by one of the council liaisons that they checked, and the CTN YouTube channel has clear audio. So anyone who wants to watch should log on to YouTube and watch us on the YouTube channel. Go ahead, Missy.
Yep, caller ending 511.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
we do.
My name's Jake Ingles. I'm calling from Ypsilanti. I'm an Ann Arbor Public Schools teacher, an AEA member, and a member of Huron Valley DSA. I think it's in the city's best interest in order to become carbon neutral by 2030 to cut DTE and their pursuit of profit out of the picture. I also want to encourage the commission to support Ann Arbor Public Power's proposed amendments, especially just transition for labor. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller ending 820.
Hi, can you hear me?
We do.
Hi, my name is Phil Bianco. I am a resident of Ward 1 in Ann Arbor. I've lived here for, I guess almost 10 years now. And I'm calling in support of municipalization in general, and specifically in support of the two amendments, the one for just transition for workers, and also the other one around the amendment to the feasibility study that would make it a little bit more focused. I think it makes the most sense to have a focused feasibility study that doesn't necessarily go into every possible option, but goes into the ones that we've been talking about a lot over the last several months, and where there's also been a lot of public support shown for it, such as municipalization and perhaps other options. So I hope that the amendments will go forward, and that is all. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for calling in.
Caller ending in 235. You're on mute, caller ending in 235. I'm not the only one that cannot hear them, correct? Caller in 235. Yep, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me? Okay, cool. Sorry, I was talking. Hi, my name's Eric McCleary. I'm with Clean Water Action Michigan. I'm calling about the Ann Arbor feasibility study for the municipality. There are two main issues that I want to emphasize with it. The first one is equity. The reason why Muni is great is because it brings our whole community along together on a journey that gets us away from corporate greed, which is the second point. This is a fight that has to be had eventually, no matter what. I think Ann Arbor is in a good place to have it now. And if we don't have it, we're just looking at a bigger fight against DTE, who we would keep paying to back their shareholders and not the ratepayers in this community. So that's why I think we should support a feasibility study. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for calling in.
Caller ending in 218.
Hey there, can you hear me?
We do.
Great. Hi, so my name is David Christensen. I'm calling from 2137, 2137 Medford Road in Ann Arbor's 3rd Ward. And I just quickly wanted to voice my support for the municipalization of the feasibility study, and in particular, the two proposed amendments to that study to both kind of like focus it and then also include the just transition for labor. I think that those two amendments are really crucial. And so that's all I had. I think everyone else here has had great points, and I just want to thank them, and I also want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for calling in and sharing your thoughts.
Caller ending in 391.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Hi, my name's Patrick Dillon. I'm a voter in Ann Arbor's Ward 4, and I want to speak out in favor of the municipalization feasibility study, as well as the two amendments focusing on a just transition and and making sure the scope of the study is right. So I'm a remote worker in Ann Arbor. And we had a lot of problems with blackouts over the summer, especially. Fact is, that's something with remote work kind of turning into the new normal for a lot of sectors. If we don't have the infrastructure to support remote workers, and if we don't have the infrastructure, broadband, energy to do that, we're going to have a lot of trouble competing for the kind of talent it's going to take that our universities and our schools do such a great job of producing. It's tough having to call a boss in California and saying, hey, I can't make it to work today because Ann Arbor can't keep the lights on. Furthermore, DTE, they're an investor-owned utility. We know they're going to be more expensive. They're more expensive than the national average. And that's because we're not just paying to keep the lights on in our own homes. We're also paying to line the pockets of the shareholders and the folks at the top of DTE who make a whole lot more than we do. And finally, DTE, it's bad for the planet. We're not going to be able to hit our climate change goals if we keep relying on coal companies like DTE. As one of the folks before me said, 59% of their energy mix is coal, 3 times the national average. If we want to get serious about tackling climate change, if we want to get serious about supporting unionized workers, if we want to get serious about treating our ratepayers and remote workers right, then we got to get off DTE and we got to support municipalization. Thank you very much, and that's all I got to say.
Thanks for calling in.
Caller ending in 217. Sorry, 217. I accidentally honked you there. Should be able to unmute again.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Great. Hi, my name is Emily Brode. I am a third-generation resident of Ann Arbor. I've lived here my whole life. And I am also calling in support of full public power, fully city municipal-owned utility that replaces DTE, as well as the 2 amendments that have been mentioned earlier that clearly define the scope of the feasibility study for the municipal utility and to support a just transition for workers. Yeah, I think everyone calling in, it's been really heartening to hear so many other people in the community care as well, particularly thinking about how my parents and grandparents have been affected by the power outages, that those have been really hard for them. And just thinking, looking at this amendment that right now, or this resolution that is, you know, encouraging partial transition to city-owned power and competition. Well, the interests of the city, the interests of the people in the city, and the interests of a for-profit company, they're not the same. So when we talk about competition between them, DTE isn't competing to provide the best quality service. They're competing to corner the market and make the most money. So to have, you know, the city competing with a company that's interested directly at odds with providing the best quality service in a way that is transparent and accountable, and something that should be a right for everyone here to have clean and reliable power, that just doesn't make sense to me. So I hope you will move forward with this resolution. I hope you will move forward with the 2 amendments that make clear what we are trying to do here and make clear that we are not leaving workers behind in this. We're not leaving the people who are, you know, actually doing the work to get our power behind in this transition, but that we can get this through, because, you know, it would be great if Ann Arbor could be carbon neutral by 2030. It would be better if we could be carbon neutral before then. And this is one place where it seems like we can make a really big difference, and we need that feasibility study to know whether or not we actually can do so. Thank you.
We appreciate you sharing your thoughts.
Caller ending in 818.
Hi, can you hear me?
We do.
Hi, my name is Chris Lewis. I live at 323 South 7th Street. Was also calling in to support the feasibility study resolution for municipal utility and for the efforts to clarify what that study would do. I think one area that I wanted to emphasize also is the potential for a municipal utility to contribute revenue to the city. I believe last year in Lansing, the public utility there contributed over $20 million to the city budget, and that in Holland and Traverse City, there were also positive revenue contributions to those city budgets. And I just wanted to make sure that the feasibility study looks into that possibility as well. Thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you.
Caller ending in 134.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Stultz and Chair Mirsky. This is Ken Garber, 28 Haverhill Court. I really appreciate the time and effort that's gone into the feasibility study resolution that's before you tonight. But as I read it, the resolution posted on Legistar is not about a muni feasibility study as defined by other cities that have done them. Instead, it calls for an options analysis. There's a distinction. A muni feasibility study sets out to answer the question, how much will it cost to acquire the incumbent private utility? And the question, how much will municipalization benefit city taxpayers and ratepayers? Here's what happens. Engineers make site visits to all DTE substations and also examine transformers and lines for age and condition. They calculate average and peak system loads based on regulatory filings and city data. Economists apply FERC and MPSC filings to evaluation. They model future coal, gas, and renewable prices and derive comparative cost and cash flow figures for DTE and for the muni. They identify the city's financing options. Finally, they project future rates under both the muni and DTE scenarios. This is all very standard, but as I read the resolution, it's not asking for this except obliquely. It calls on City Council to, quote, authorize and fund a feasibility study to analyze and propose multiple potential pathways the city could take to meet its 820 energy-related emissions reduction and clean energy goals, end quote. That's an options analysis, and that's clearly what Commission wants City Council to authorize and fund. But to me, it's not a feasibility study. Maybe the intent is to do a standard muni feasibility study as part of this options analysis. So this should be spelled out. Look, I know there's ambivalence on this commission to the idea of a muni. The concerns over protected litigation and opportunity costs are wholly legitimate. I share those concerns. But consider this. My rough calculations show that DTE is taking out at least $22 million in annual profits from Ann Arbor just from its electricity customers. What do budgets look like when the city captures that revenue? Will it exceed the cost of acquiring and operating the system? And if so, by how much? This gets at the question Mr. Lewis just asked, the previous caller. That's what a feasibility study will tell us.
30 seconds.
An options analysis won't be worth much without that knowledge. All right, I'll sum up. Your resolution, as posted, calls for an options analysis, not for a feasibility study as it's usually defined. I suggest that you include a rigorous muni feasibility study in whatever resolution you pass tonight. Thank you for considering my comments and for your wonderful volunteer work on behalf of the city.
Thanks for calling in.
Caller ending in 661.
Hello, hi, can you hear me?
Hi, we do.
Hi, my name is Gus Teske. I live at 313 Montgomery. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and for your work to help make Ann Arbor carbon neutral by 2030, especially our source of electricity. I'm representing Ann Arbor Indivisible. We're one of the groups that formed to fight the Trump agenda because it's a serious threat to our democracy, but we also consider the climate emergency a serious threat. And so we support the resolution from Ann Arbor for Public Power for a feasibility study for a municipal electric utility. We voted to endorse the original resolution last January, and we're happy to see that you're bringing it to a vote tonight, though with some changes. We support the amendments submitted by Commissioner McCoy that clarify the resolution clarify that the resolution is for a feasibility study for a municipal energy utility, electric utility. We endorsed it because we are amazed that the electric service is so unreliable, so expensive, so dirty, and emits so much carbon. You know, we really want to take a close look at a municipal electric utility. If you look around the state, other municipal utilities are more reliable, have lower rates, and we could make ours 100% renewable. Chelsea pays 40% less than we do for electricity, and they get better service. You know, we can have nice things too, really. We like the muni. Also because it totally replaces DTE. Our own utility will be accountable to us, and that's a big step. DTE is a monopoly and doesn't have to listen to us. And we also like that the Muni includes almost all the good things in the SEU report. It excludes DTE, as I said before, which is also important. Ann Arbor for Public Power has collected over 1,200 signatures on a petition in support of a feasibility study for a Muni. And this shows strong public interest to see what a qualified consultant would propose and its cost estimate.
30 seconds.
Ann Arbor wants to see that information, and I imagine it'd be an easy vote for that thing. So in closing, we support the 2 amendments submitted by Commissioner McCoy because they clarify the resolution recommends a feasibility study for a municipal electric utility. Thank you for your work on this. Good night.
Thank you.
Caller ending in 847. Caller ending in 847, you can unmute. This is the one we struggled with before. I think that we might want to go on. That was our last public commenter. I cannot get them to unmute. Oh, there we go. They're gone now, so I don't know what happened. Caller ending in 194. Caller ending in 194, you're on mute. Caller ending in 194, we cannot hear you.
We just heard a click, caller 194. I don't know if you can do something again.
You just muted. Let's see, let's try to unmute again. I show them as unmuted. Obviously, we're not getting volume.
Yeah. Do we have anybody else waiting?
We do not.
Okay, well, I appreciate the heroic efforts of callers 194 and 847, but I think we need to move on. Before we move on to the main agenda, I just want to acknowledge, as Missy did briefly, Commissioner Clevey joined us. So for the purpose of the roll call, he should be reflected as attending. And I assume, Mark, you're attending from your home in Ann Arbor, correct? Yep, very good. Thanks for your efforts as well, as yours, Missy, to get him in. So we now are onto the 2 main agenda items. We have 2 resolutions for our consideration. The first is the resolution recommending Ann Arbor City Council authorize a municipal utility feasibility study. And before I open the discussion, I'd like to share some remarks that I prepared in advance about the almost 1-year-long journey that got us to this point for, I guess, primarily the public's sake. First of all, I'd like to start out by thanking Ann Arbor for Public Power, or A2P2, for initiating the conversation on municipalization in late last year. And I'm sure the rest of the commission very much appreciate the presentations in our February and July meetings that A2P2 representatives made, and its proposed resolution calling for the city to authorize a feasibility study of municipalization through condemnation of DTEs assets. And that was circulated earlier in the year and was formally introduced in our July meeting. And I also want to thank again all of the many well-reasoned public comments that were offered by residents and members of A2P2 or supporters of A2P2. We've heard and listened to all of those comments basically to every meeting since February, and we appreciate them very much. In the meantime, as a result of the Commission's inquiry into possible pathways forward, we've had a number of other insightful and illuminating presentations on related topics, like the legal aspects related to municipalization, community choice aggregation, and the municipalization efforts of Boulder, Colorado, and Winter Park, Florida. Those presentations and other conversations spawned the idea of a municipal sustainable utility, or SEU. A report on the concept was issued by OSI in October and presented to the Commission in November. We now have a new draft resolution and proposed friendly amendments before us for our consideration this evening. They are the outcome of a subgroup process that the Commission authorized at our November meeting. For the rest of the Commission's benefit, the subgroup started with the status of the resolution at the end of the last meeting and the votes that were taken. Sorry about that. I'm going to mute for a second.
I thought that was my heart monitor.
After the tone.
Sorry about that. That was a spam call. So the subgroup started with the resolution at the end of that meeting, and we created a Google Doc. People entered comments into the Google Doc. We held 2 meetings, exchanged multiple emails before settling on the draft posted on Legistar under meeting details for tonight's meeting. And we tried to stay true to the votes taken and the comments made in the November meeting. Thus far, 2 friendly amendments have been submitted in writing, as we've heard from many of the people calling in, and they were distributed to commissioners this morning. Today, together, they are very close in content to the A2P2 initial resolution, but include resolve clauses dealing with multiple possible pathways ranging from municipalization through condemnation to the possible formation of an SEU. I want to emphasize that we are considering and voting on the Commission's own resolution. Whatever we approve, assuming that is the case, is likely to differ somewhat from A2P2's initial resolution. I hope we reach a consensus. In any case, I'm confident it will reflect our collective ideas on what is best for the entire community. In turn, we must recognize that our resolution is only advisory, and City Council may approve a resolution that differs from ours. As the saying goes, that is how the sausage is made. So let's get on to the task of finishing our sausage. Missy, I would appreciate it if you would post or share the draft resolution reflecting the work completed by the subgroup. And I hope that all of you have read it and the explanatory comments in the right-hand column. I would appreciate it if someone would make a resolution for the Commission for us to consider it and for another commissioner to second the motion. And once we have it up, then hopefully maybe we can get someone to make the requested motion. So moved.
I can't share and do notes. So hold on. I can't share and do notes. So can I see the vote on consideration really quick, just so I can get that in the notes, please?
Say that again. Sorry, Missy.
Who motioned? I'm sorry, I missed.
Travis did.
Who motioned to consider? Okay.
Yeah. Travis.
It looks like Charlene seconded it. Either that or she's just waving.
I'll second.
Yes.
Thanks, Beck.
Are you able to share the document, Missy?
In a minute.
Digging it up. Thanks.
Shut up.
There we go. So I'm happy to run through the document quickly, but only if commissioners feel that is appropriate, both for our sake as well as for the sake of the public. Is there anyone that feels that that's necessary? It's posted on Legistar. This is very similar to what we had discussed in our last meeting. There are a few minor changes, like introducing the acronym SCU, changing revision changes. You can see there's lots and lots of whereas clauses that don't have any changes. We made a few changes so that we use pathways consistently instead of ideas and other similar kinds of words. So can I see, or can someone unmute if they want us to run through all of these? Or if from the two council members, is there a need to actually go through this word by word? I'm seeing no's.
From my place, I mean, I think everybody has it ahead of time, so I don't think we need to go through it all unless folks have questions.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I felt the same way. This got out probably 2 weeks ago, and there are some changes to the resolve clauses, but they're not anything significant. The one thing that we have done is, as we discussed at the end of the last meeting, we consolidated 2 resolve clauses and moved some of that into some of the content into a resolve clause, but that is right, exactly right there. But that would potentially be changed by one of the 2 friendly amendments submitted in writing for our consideration. So we have this then open for any other further discussion. Any other further discussion before we go to the 2 amendments?
I would like to just bring something up that we received a suggestion from a member of the public who, as resident in the city, is considered a key stakeholder. All voices are considered at this point, and would like to propose that we add more detail in the whereas statement number 12, and that acknowledges that the original, so the whereas statement number 12 says some members of the community have expressed interest in exploring the creation of a traditional municipal utility that would replace DTE. And I would like to suggest that we add to that the following. With its targeted benefits accruing to all Ann Arbor residents for 1, lower electricity rates, 2, more reliable service, 3, local accountability and governance, and 4, 100% renewable electricity distributed to the entire Ann Arbor electric grid. Those are 33 more words. And if this is something that would be, receptive to fellow commission, I would like to propose that we add that.
Do we have a motion to, so you're motioning that we add that, Carlene? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. So that's open for discussion. Anybody want to comment on those additions? Commissioner Clevey.
Yes, I like the intent. I just want to say that there is no municipal utility in Michigan, or no utility in Michigan other than DTE and consumers and other investor-owned utilities that provide power to 100% of the customers in their area. And if Ann Arbor was a municipal utility with only green power, they'd be the only one in the state and one of the few in the nation. I don't know any other one that would do that. So the trying to do that is really difficult. And lastly, all of the municipal utilities in Michigan, all of them provide primarily brown power with smaller renewable programs, some growing and some not. So the idea that somehow we're going to become this renewable energy guru and force green power onto people that don't want it is just doesn't make sense to me. It's unrealistic. Nobody's ever done it. The best we can hope for is to reach carbon neutrality, which is what we're trying to do here. And so somehow it seems to me we get off on these tangents that, wanting to, make people do things. I want to get to carbon neutrality as fast as possible. And I think we should stick to our knitting here rather than trying to micromanage and be prescriptive. And so that we end up complicating this issue so much that people in the city's hands are tied when they come to opportunities to bring in new innovations, et cetera, to help us reach our one goal here, which is carbon neutrality. And that's the goal we're going after. And I think we should focus on that and hand this over to people that are going to do the work, giving them as much flexibility as possible and as limited minimum amount of micromanagement as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Councilmember Radina.
Thanks. I appreciate Commissioner Cleavy's sentiments there. I do want to express that. I don't necessarily share those concerns because of the content of this whereas clause. This is a whereas clause, and it's specifically stipulating what some members of the community have expressed and is clarifying that further. I guess Commissioner Colvin Garcia, without having it in front of me, was it language that stipulated that was what they wanted, or was it that it is those were the goals? I'm sorry, I'm trying to think back to the original language there. I don't necessarily have a problem with further expressing what members of the community have expressed to us. I just want to make sure that it's, these are the goals that those members of the community have set out. It's not necessarily tying the hands of what the outcome is, because as Commissioner Cleavy pointed out, and as I think we've learned throughout this process, day one, no matter what path we go down, we're not going to have 100% renewable power. And so I think setting realistic expectations up front, because that may take time.
So two things. Number one, this came from, this is verbatim from a request from a member of the community to present this to the commission. And I'm presenting it exactly as it was requested as far as that phrasing is concerned. And then, so it's in the context of the whereas clause, which is stating the original context for bringing this before the commission, this request for a feasibility study. Not just, it was just some members of the community have expressed interest in exploring the creation of a traditional municipal utility. It's adding more of the reasons behind why there is an interest, why this interest emerged. That's the point. It's not instructing, it's providing context.
Thank you. I think that answers my second question as well. Thanks.
Staff Liaison Stoltz.
Commissioner Colvin Garcia, can you please send me the text so I can share it with the group?
Commissioner McCoy.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, I think this language was sent to all of us, right? So it is in all of our inboxes. And I would just say that in response to what Commissioner Cleavy is saying, like, I do understand that, we're not going to move to 100% renewable energy immediately. I think when community members are referring to that, though, they're referring to Ann Arbor's stated goal of moving to 100% renewable energy. So I think there's just obviously nuance within that, but that's just what people are referring to.
Chairman Murphy, I wonder if you could take a moment and respond to this issue of the commission setting a precedent by letting people send in resolutions and language to commissioners and them reading them verbatim, but not taking responsibility for saying it's theirs. The citizens have their right to call in, voice their opinions, and do those things. I don't think it's appropriate that a citizen would text a resolution requirement into a member of this commission, and they would then interject it into our meetings without taking responsibility and saying exactly, well, this comes from somebody else, and I'm just reading it. I think that is really inappropriate, and I'd like you to comment on this, please.
So two things, actually. I wanted to say earlier, I had received a recommendation from a commissioner that I conduct the meeting in such a way that if someone is responding to another commissioner's comments, that I recognize that person before going on and recognizing other people talking about other topics. So I will try to do that for the rest of the evening. I apologize for not having done that earlier. I'll comment in two regards while I have the floor regarding this suggested change. So first of all, the requested change was introduced by a commissioner, and it was seconded by another commissioner. So as far as I'm concerned, it's appropriate for the commission to consider the request. Someone can call in, someone can email us, and that they can, we can acknowledge that, but we don't necessarily have to introduce that as a friendly amendment. In this particular case, we had two commissioners that seconded this friendly amendment for all of our consideration. And so in my opinion, it's appropriate. As to the specifics of the amendment itself, I actually responded to a prompt by probably the same individual that Carleen is referring to. The person asked whether or not I would introduce this as a friendly amendment, and I said that I wouldn't, and I will now share my feelings why I said that I wouldn't, and that is because I don't agree with it, because it's in effect stating in a whereas clause in language that this is in a sense fact, and indeed this is exactly why we are authorizing a feasibility study, to understand exactly what not only this pathway, but other pathways will offer for the city. And it only mentions all of the benefits of a municipal utility through condemnation. It doesn't talk about the cost, both the one-time upfront costs as well as the acquisition costs. It doesn't talk about any of the risks. It doesn't evaluate any of those. It only lists all of the benefits of a municipal utility. I think we all recognize that there are likely benefits from that, but that's exactly why we are requesting that City Council authorize and pay for a feasibility study, so we know exactly what the benefits will be, what the risks will be, what potentially the downsides are, and therefore I personally would not support this being introduced in the whereas clause, because I think this is something that will come out in the wash, so to speak, as opposed to putting it into a whereas clause with essentially as a statement of fact. And maybe I misunderstood the language. It may have changed slightly. We're going to see it. So it's the language you can see here with it says it's targeted benefits accruing to all of the residents for lower electricity rates. I mean, that is to be determined. More reliable service. I don't know that we can say that for a fact. All the municipal utilities in different towns are run by different municipalities with different leadership, local accountability and governance. That is true. I'll just say, you can say the same thing about Ann Arbor roads. Ann Arbor roads should be wonderful if we ran it as a municipal utility, but I think we recognize that that's not necessarily the case. And as Commissioner Clevey said, certainly we would aspire to 100% renewable electricity, no matter what we do and through what pathway. But at least this is my opinion that we shouldn't include this. I think the current whereas clause is sufficient. That's my personal opinion, and I'll end my comments there and recognize Councilmember Adina.
Thanks. Sorry, I just had one more clarifying question because I got this language in email as well, and just want to clarify because I thought I heard Commissioner Colvin Garcia state it slightly differently, but maybe I misheard. My understanding was that you were keeping the original text and adding a portion of this amendment to it at the end. Is that not accurate? Did you want to replace the entirety?
I propose to add to the end of the existing whereas.
Where we were essentially just expressing what the targeted benefits of those members of the community were, as opposed to stating them as fact. Correct.
Correct.
Just want to be clear. This is the language that you sent me, Commissioner Colvin Garcia. So
I apologize. I should have like rewritten it the way that I was proposing it. Let me do that.
Okay.
Okay.
I believe if I mean, obviously send it. My understanding was that first sentence of the proposed amendment should be cut out at DTE. Like it should start with its targeted benefits accruing coming at the end there. I believe that's how you read it.
Yes.
And I believe that was the request that was sent to all of us via email.
I apologize about that. I just sent that. To include expressed interest and then with the targeted benefits.
Let me just pull the language directly from you and get that updated here.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, and I appreciate this. I don't think there's any problem with this coming forward and being considered. I would guess I would just suggest that since the last commission meeting, we've had there was kind of that working group meeting, and I know we have a couple other amendments to consider tonight. I often don't think whereas clauses are particularly, it's not particularly binding, but I actually do have, to the degree that this sets an expectation for the community about what would come, I do recognize that this is aspirational, but I do think that some of the elements of this are unrealistic for us to be able to achieve, as others have stated, anytime in the near future. So I don't know. You thought.
Thank you. Any other comments before we take a vote on this? Then we have two more to consider. So seeing no other hands raised or verbal comments, all those in favor of the new clause as highlighted in yellow on the screen, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
We have one, two.
Chairman, I think for the benefit of staff taking down, we might want to do a roll call.
Okay, we'll do a roll call then.
Thank you so much. Are you able, Chair?
I can do the roll call based on the screen. Yep. So Commissioner Garber, unmute yourself, please. Everybody for the roll call.
Everybody on mute so we can go fast.
Yes, exactly.
No.
Commissioner Levin.
I would also vote no.
Commissioner Garcia.
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy.
No.
Commissioner Redina.
No.
Councilmember Redina. Councilmember Briggs.
No.
Commissioner Juneau.
No.
Commissioner Overpeck.
Yes.
Commissioner McCumber.
No.
Commissioner Clevey.
No.
Commissioner George.
No.
And and I also vote no. That is, I didn't count how many for, but 2 against. How many votes was that for, Missy, just so we have it on the record?
Oh, I'll have it in the record. I have it in the notes. Bill Spencer,
2,
1, 2,
2 for, and everybody else against.
10. It's 10 against, 2 for.
10 against and 2 for. Okay, thank you. So now we have 2 other amendments that have been referenced multiple times, and I would appreciate it if those could be called up.
I just need a minute to update notes, please. Yeah. With the
And
amendment.
while Missy's doing that, maybe I would ask first that Commissioner, well, first of all, can we have a motion to consider, so we'll handle this one first. This is in yellow. Which you can see here. Can we have a motion that we consider this amendment and then a second?
So moved.
So
That we consider.
Commissioner McCumber and Commissioner McCoy, I think. So I'd like to open things up for discussion. If you use the raise hand function or voice your intent to speak. Commissioner Clevey.
Yes, I guess I have similar comments on both of these amendments, but I thought we were dealing with the other one first. So let me just say for a moment that I don't think it's the responsibility of the Energy Commission to micromanage the City of Ann Arbor's operations, contracting process, or procurement policies. So if the City of Ann Arbor is incapable of understanding and managing the elements of a feasibility study, then we got bigger problems than trying to micromanage and direct them through paragraphs on things. And I don't think this is going to help them implement this. What it does is specify very directly what we think that they should be doing. If it is appropriate for them to do this, once they get into the options and they look at this going forward, then they will decide how much of this needs to be done and how best to do that. I don't think it's appropriate for us to be telling them that. We are here to advise them on policy and advise them on things, not advise them on how to do their jobs. And so I think that they will rightfully take umbrage with this, and I recommend that we don't adopt this one.
Thank you. Councilmember Briggs.
Thank you. I think Commissioner Clevey, you're absolutely correct in the sense that our staff has completely capable of doing a feasibility study and having making sure all the elements are in there that we need to have there. I do think that in this case, and you're right, when resolutions come before council, there's a request by staff not to kind of put in all of the elements in it because staff needs to be able to do their work. I think in this case, given this year-long discussion that the community has had, I think there's a lot of interest and just concern about maybe what the next steps are, and if this provides greater faith, I guess, from the community about what's going to come next. That's, from my perspective, that's fine. If we're getting a sense of this is what's, these are the traditional elements of a feasibility study. I guess I would, just give opportunity for Dr. Stoltz now to weigh in, and if there's any desire to have this be more sort of loosely worded, that's certainly an opportunity. But if I think there's whatever comes in front of council might be different as well. But I certainly, if there is anything you'd like to say at this moment, Dr. Stoltz, that's fine.
I'm happy to chime in and say these are elements of things that we would investigate, and we have it in a whereas clause above 2, which I know Commissioner McCoy worked on. It's honestly fairly agnostic. I think the question, fairly agnostic at this point. think we're just ready to move on over here.
Okay, very good. So hearing that, I think if it gives, we've heard a lot of folks in the community asking for this to be included as in the resolution tonight, and I, think that while it's not typical for us to put this in here, I think that there's desire from the community to have it there, and I'm happy to help move it forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Radina, then Commissioners George and McCoy. Actually, McCoy first and then George.
Thanks. I will be relatively brief in concurring with Councilmember Briggs. I think this is perfectly, I plan on supporting this amendment. I think it is fine to include. I want to stress that, ultimately this is a recommendation coming from Energy Commission. And I think that recommendation can include this. It doesn't mean that, that this is exactly how the process is going to play out once we get feedback from staff. It could, but I think the fact that we have had as a body considerable discussion about this, the recommendation from this body could be to follow this path. I think that's reasonable. Perhaps I hope not at the sake of overcomplicating, and I apologize to Commissioner McCoy because I did read this ahead of time. For the sake of consistency and maybe a little clarity to the public, it's possible we might want to add after resolved that the Ann Arbor Energy Commission recommends, to make it clear that it's a recommendation and it would be consistent with all the other resolved clauses. I hope that would be friendly and maybe clear up any confusion around expectation that this is exactly what's going to happen, because this is a recommendation from the commission.
Thank you. Commissioner McCoy.
Yeah, I also don't have much to add than what was already said, so I wanted to keep this quick. I just wanted to note that I also edited this a little bit it's similar to a resolve clause that was sent to us by a community member, but I intentionally edited some of the language to make it not as limiting, by changing like the words to such as and not just like including these elements, in order to add some flexibility there. But yeah, all of these things are things that would be traditionally in an energy feasibility study, which is where they came from.
Commissioner George.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, as some folks have already said, this is just simply, in my opinion, a guardrail and a reassurance that one of the main driving forces of this effort is included, even though I do believe, as Dr. Stoltz has stated before in the past, that it would be included. Just that extra reassurance, I think, is no problemo to add into this resolution to make sure all parties feel comfortable moving forward with this, and that there's confidence in the process and in the outcome. And I think that is one of the main things that we're trying to achieve here. So that's all I have to say, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Calvin Garcia.
I'm just going to piggyback on what others have said so far with regards to as far as our role as energy commissioners and being an advisory body to city council. There are things that we can emphasize and highlight that would just make sure that our voices are heard. And I think that's what this resolve clause does represent, not in a restrictive manner, but more like we just want to make sure as a resolve clause, in addition to its, yes, it is, there's some similarities with the whereas clause as well, but just make sure that as far as this part of our resolution, it's included. That's all I wanted to make sure that we're doing our job here. Thank you.
Thank you. Missy, I see you have your hand raised as well.
Yeah, just from a procedural standpoint, I do think we have a sub motion that we have to decide if it's friendly to the body, that Councilmember Radina brought forward, that the group needs to decide on before we can vote on this.
So what I'll do is I'll ask for 2 votes then, one for the addition and then one for the whole thing. How's that? Great. Appreciate you pointing that out. Any other comments before we take a vote? So I'm just going to comment briefly. I'm going to actually reverse my opinion from what I had in the last meeting where I suggested we be less prescriptive, given the sentiment in the community and given we want to reassure, have a sense of assurance to everyone that these are the kinds of things that we want a feasibility study to clear up. I am going to vote in favor of this. I think it makes sense. And hopefully we get not only this information, but a lot of other good information about the feasibility of municipalization through condemnation, as well as potentially other pathways. So if anybody else, I see Commissioner Juneau and Commissioner Kerber also want to weigh in before. Go ahead, Commissioner Kerber.
Yes. I think the discussion's an interesting one. I think it is not necessarily true that there's the sentiment in the community is so behind everything here. There's another sentiment that's kind of questioning what is going on here. So I don't think that is necessarily something that everybody should assume just because you have 1,200 signatures. That is not necessarily the whole community. It's a very small segment that's very committed, and that's wonderful. But don't extend that to the whole community.
Just for clarification, my point was that the sentiment was that these are the elements that should be included in the feasibility study. Not that the feasibility study is going to then definitively ascertain what the 1,100 people from A2P2 believe is the right path forward. That's something, that's why we're commissioning the study. So just to clarify my remarks, thank you. Commissioner Juneau.
I don't want to complicate things, and I also would intend to vote in favor of this clause. But I do think that the previous version from the last resolution brought up in November, in my opinion, does kind of a better job of, and I just wonder if there's any benefit in just going back to that one where it was, there was a clause that simply stated, resolved, Ann Arbor Commission recommends that City Council authorize and fund a study to determine the feasibility of establishing a muni, including estimates of revenues, cost of acquiring, emphasizing cost of power utility with 100% renewable energy, assessment of the quality, along with all the annual operations, maintenance costs, debt servicing, etc. Yeah, so that one, I just wonder if there's, that one, it seems like was already part of the resolution and maybe had been with us for a longer period of time. I just wonder if, I guess it doesn't really make a huge difference, but I do think that text maybe had more holistic and more thought put into it potentially. So just wanted to raise that as well.
Thanks for raising that as a possibility. People can take that into consideration when they vote on this. I don't know that they're materially different. So we have this in front of us for a vote. The one request that I would have is very, very minor, is there's a capital A in a direct engineering assessment. I think that should be small case. I think other than that, it's all correct. Does anybody else have any other comments before we take a roll call vote on this? So we're going to vote on this, and if it were to be voted down, then we can consider Commissioner Juneau's option if people feel that's necessary. So I'm going to do a roll call on whether.
Just really quick, I think first we're voting on Councilmember Radina's proposed addition.
Yeah,
not the whole thing.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think procedurally, Chair Mirsky, you could ask if it were a friendly amendment, and if no one objects, it would be accepted as a friendly amendment.
Okay, thanks for the hint. So I'd like to know if this is accepted as a friendly amendment. Are there any objections to that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So the friendly amendment portion is that the Ann Arbor Energy Commission recommends, right? So
and now we need to do a roll call vote.
Pardon me?
And now we would do a roll call vote on that amendment.
Yeah. So we have to do a roll call vote on both, right?
Yep.
Okay. So roll call vote on adding that the Ann Arbor Energy Commission recommends. So Commissioner Kerber, are you in your vote on adding that the Ann Arbor Energy Commission recommends?
Yes.
Commissioner Levin,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia, Calvin Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Commissioner Redina,
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs,
Yes.
Commissioner Juneau,
Yes.
Commissioner Overpeck,
Yes.
Commissioner McComber,
Yes.
Commissioner Kiwi,
No.
and Commissioner George.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. So that is, I think, 11-1. Now we're going to take a vote on the entire text as we see it in front of us in yellow, including the clause that we just approved. And I'm going to go through the roll call again. Commissioner Kerber,
Yes.
Commissioner Levin,
Yes.
Commissioner Calvin Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Councilmember Redina,
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs,
Yes.
Councilmember Juneau,
Yes.
Councilmember Peck,
Yes.
Councilmember McComber,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevey,
No.
or Commissioner Clevey, sorry, just promoted you.
Yes, thank you.
And Commissioner George,
Yes.
and I also vote yes. So the friendly amendment and passes and will be incorporated into the final resolution. So we have one other resolve clause that we now see on our screen. And I'd like a motion that it be considered and a second motion from Councilmember Redina, second from someone else, Commissioner Juneau. So we have a first and a second. I'd like to open things up for discussion on this. Mr. George.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will make my comment very short. The reason that Commissioner McCoy and I wanted to move forward with this amendment is to ensure, as the text reads, that the overall feasibility study and generally the overall intent with this transition process is a equitable transition. And I know that you had mentioned to us in regards to the value statement that is already in the overarching document, but we wanted to include this additional text here because of some of the recent actions that we've seen in the city that have shown that the city has not always held true to its values, and that it is important that when we are making these big transitions, that we do not make the same mistakes that were made during the 90s and the 2000s around offshoring and automation, and that workers really need to be prioritized in these conversations, and that the growing inequality crisis in this country and in our county is properly addressed in city decision making. And this language would attempt to start that conversation and make sure that it is a relevant point in any major decisions moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Clevey.
And I find my objections to this are exactly in opposition to Commissioner George. I think this is the wrong place to establish a precedent. I'm really very, very familiar with procurement law and rules and regulations from local government, state government, federal government levels. Specifically with this, I'm concerned with the language stating that be considered core components in any decision relating to the meeting of energy needs of the city. I say this because I think the resolution is not only way beyond the scope of the Energy Commission's responsibility, but also because it's simply unsound public policy the way that it's being presented. The resolution is asking us to endorse a major change and exception to Ann Arbor's procurement and contracting processes, a change that will impact the purchase of light bulbs, fax machines, computers, cars, buses, electric vehicles, and yes, solar panels. It will cause the city to make an exception for energy needs, treating it differently than any other item that is funded with tax dollars and governed by procurement law in the city. It will require the city to change its process for requests for proposals, contracts, and grants. It will directly impact the city's internal capital improvements projects process, and finally had major implications on Ann Arbor's human resources policies and operations. I'm deeply concerned over any proposed resolution that is one outside the commission's purview to advise the council on policy that is so, in my opinion, so poorly considered. And finally, whose impact would be so disruptive and costly to our government. And if we want to make a statement about how Ann Arbor should deal with, people who are disrupted due to technological innovation and other things, I think we're stepping into an area that we simply can't manage. I don't ever want to be put in a position where we can't adopt some innovation because it's going to disrupt current jobs, and we have to take responsibility for doing something about it. I think this is the wrong words. It's the wrong place. Sets the wrong precedent. If what we want is to address worker dislocation, then let's do a separate thing on that. And even if we do that, I'm concerned that we'll be stepping way beyond our areas of responsibility as the Energy Commission. So I'm concerned about this. I think it's bad precedent. I don't think we should be doing it, and I urge others to vote no. Thank you.
Commissioner Radina, or Councilmember Radina, and then Commissioner McCoy.
Thanks, Chair Mirsky. I just wanted to chime in. I'm going to support this amendment. I disagree with Commissioner Clevey in almost entirety there. I think one, the just transition piece is referred to regularly throughout the 820 document itself, the plan itself. It talks about a just transition to carbon neutrality, and I would actually argue that based on the recent ordinance or charter revision that was adopted by Ann Arbor voters, this is in line with how we are moving toward contracting and procurement moving forward. Worker compensation and training are going to be factors in how we hire workers and how we procure services. So I'm going to support this. I want to thank Commissioner George and Commissioner McCoy for bringing it forward. Thanks.
For the comments, Commissioner McCoy, and then Commissioner Clevey, you still have your hand up. If you still want to talk after that, I'll recognize you. But if that was from before, you can take it down. Go ahead, Commissioner McCoy.
Thanks. Yeah, part of what I was going to say was what Councilmember Radina already covered. And I think the other part is that, for me, the entirety of this resolution is a recommendation to City Council of a study that, we ultimately also don't know the results of, and whether what will come back around municipalization is something we will support, whenever it comes back. So I think the intent for me was that this type of thing around just transition and workers is considered as we get feedback about what municipalization might look like in Ann Arbor. So if we know whether or not we want to move forward with it. And so to me, I don't see it, as restrictive in that way. I think it's like getting a better understanding of what that could mean, and really showing that we value this just transition piece and the labor piece. I think one of the earlier commenters, mentioned how I think we really need to have, in order to move forward in this climate movement and these transitions, we need to be prioritizing workers and the people who are actually doing the work. And so I think that's really the intent behind this resolved clause.
Thanks. Commissioner Clevey, did you have another comment?
I just want to respond to Councilman Radina's comment.
Yeah.
820 is exactly where this sentiment should be, and it is in the right place. This particular resolution is talking about a feasibility study. Are we saying here that we want to make sure in the clause you just approved, which again I disagree with, I didn't see anything in that clause. It went through and told what a feasibility study was, and it waxed and waned on what we should do. And it was very, very prescriptive. It didn't say anything about worker training or these kinds of things. So it seems to me that I would be stunned if the city of Ann Arbor did any feasibility study about a major energy project that was outside of the scope of A20. This is already in A20. So again, I really disagree with us being overly prescriptive and micromanaging stuff. If you really want this clause, let's move it up to the one that you just approved and add this in there as well. So we'll do these 10 things, but we also want to do this as well. If that's the main concern, that's great. Commissioner George said he wanted to establish a precedent here that goes to all, that can be done across the city. That's great. I think that's a wonderful thing. Want to endorse that precedent? Let's do it in a separate resolution. If you want to do this, then add it to the laundry list that you have on the thing that just got approved. This is getting messy. We're sticking in all these little things here and there. I'm not saying we shouldn't do these things. I'm saying I agree totally with A20, and that's the appropriate place where this should be addressed.
Commissioner Garber and then Commissioner Levin. Larry, you need to unmute.
Sorry. I don't think this communicates directly. I mean, if the intent here is to require unionization of all jobs, then say so. You know, my concern is first, this is about climate, a climate emergency. Climate is what we're focusing on. Things that are associated with or supporting need to be addressed elsewhere. I think we're talking about climate first and foremost, and not let things like this get in the way.
Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned too about how this distracts a little bit. And I have a sort of a question. I'm not sure who this is best directed to, but is the intent of this resolve clause to mean that these considerations will be considered within the feasibility study, or are we just saying going forward, we want to ensure a just transition?
Would you like me to?
That wants to answer that. Go ahead, Commissioner George, or George, is that you?
Yes, it is. Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, to answer Commissioner Levin's question, it's 2 points. One, yes, it is to recognize just transition, which is a key component of any general movement on clean energy, is that you are creating jobs that did not exist before and ensuring that those jobs continue to support a middle-class income like the jobs that they are replacing is the heart of a just transition. And so, you know, I would strongly rebut kind of the overall a sentiment that some folks have expressed that it is a separate issue. It is not a separate issue. It is a part of the transition that we're all talking about and that we all want to achieve, because these are the people that are implementing the goals that we were talking about when we're talking about reductions in carbon, and we're talking about electrification and all of these other items that we're talking about here. These are the workers that are going to be doing it. And so we need to make sure that they are receiving the same benefits in the positions that they will have that the folks that held those similar positions in the fossil fuel industry held before. And it's really about continuing to make sure that we are an equitable community here in Washtenaw County on all parts, from environmentalism to labor.
I guess just to clarify, my question is just, are you asking that you know, that when we do the feasibility study, we consider, you know, the costs and or whatever needs to be considered to, you know, hire workers, you know, in a just way? I'm not against that. I'm just wondering if there's if this is like a separate resolution, because or are we asking that this be considered as part of the feasibility study? Because the way it reads right now, it doesn't seem like we're asking when the feasibility study is done that this specific factor be accounted for.
That was the intent, that it would be included as an overall value or reinforcement of the value, and something to be considered in the study to see to what degree there would be issues with displacement and what those types of jobs would include. So it was kind of a melding of both what you're alluding to there and an overall reinforcement of the existing values.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Calvin Garcia, and then Commissioner McCoy, and then Commissioner Juneau, and I'll weigh in at the end. I'll share some comments that I shared via email with Commissioners McCoy and George at the end, and we can consider those two when we vote. So go ahead, Commissioner Calvin Garcia. I've pulled up my comments so I can read from those later on.
All right. So I kind of interpreted this clause to be that the city would train local workers for running if there's a decision to create, and have a new municipally owned utility, that local workers then would be trained and then compensated at the level that DTE workers would have been paid. So like a just transition for full transition for local workers. And it doesn't sound like that specifically is what this clause is. Can you please clarify that? Thanks.
Commissioner McCoy, do you want to address that maybe with Commissioner George afterwards? Since your hand was up, I'll maybe allow you to comment on that and then let Commissioner George weigh in before we go on to another commissioner.
Sure. I was going to suggest, which I think this also relates to responding to what Commissioner Calvin Garcia was saying, but I was going to suggest along the lines of what Commissioner Levin was saying as well, that we could propose language in, I don't have the full resolution in front of me, but language in the earlier clause where we ask for the economic, legal, and technical feasibility of each pathway, like adding a couple words in there saying economic, legal, and technical feasibility of each pathway. And I can't think of the language right now, but something like along, including workers and laborers and just transition in there to have it be incorporated in the feasibility study. I think that would be a separate vote of an amendment, but just so that is incorporated in the feasibility study as well to address that question. The thing that I originally also raised my hand for, which I think this kind of just digresses a bit, but I did want to respond to Commissioner Kerper's comments that I do understand that what we're talking about now is, of course, climate, but I think it's important that we recognize that climate is inextricably linked to things like labor, affordability, housing, justice, and so much more. And in order for us to really get to where we need to be, we need to recognize that those things are linked and we cannot separate them. And so I think that's also part of, this intent overall, this, literally what I do my research on. So I think it's really important that, we don't try to separate these things that are very much linked. And I think we see that throughout A20 as well, that, all these pieces come together. And we can't just say we're only talking about climate when it affects so much more.
So Commissioner Overpeck, and then I'm going to weigh in with share the comments that I shared via email. So go ahead, Peck.
Yeah, I think we're hearing some solutions, alternative solutions. But I just want to move on because I'll vote in favor of this. And the reason is it's in A20. It's a principle for what Ann Arbor sees as the future of its carbon neutrality. All we're doing is reminding everybody of that. And we've already said in A20 that we're going to do it. So we're just reminding everyone who's doing anything with respect to these ideas, this feasibility study, that is part of what they have to include in their work. In other words, a value that must be included. So it's just, you could say it's redundant, like Mark did, or Commissioner Levy, but let's just get it over with. It's not hurting anything having it in there.
So I'm going to share what I shared with Commissioner George and Commissioner McCoy. So there is already in our resolution a whereas clause that refers to what we call criteria and principles for achieving Ann Arbor renewable energy goals. And it refers specifically to that document. It has only one word in there that relates to one of those criteria, and that is as follows. It says, grounded in equity and justice. The third criteria is about ensuring our strategy is grounded in procedural and distributive equity. This means that the solution we find, just a second, I gotta slide things over here. Sorry. Sorry, I can't slide my screen over small. Let me do this. In any case, here I can do this. Minimize it. Okay, so this means that the solutions we find to reducing energy consumption and powering our grid with renewable energy should center low income and minority populations in both decision making as well as in the benefits of solutions. It also means piecing together different solutions that are respective of different capacities and lived experiences of members of our community, and finding solutions that support fair and just compensation for those helping to create a renewable energy future. So my comment was, if that portion of the statement at the end, finding solutions that support fair and just compensation for those helping to create a renewable energy future, if that isn't sufficient in relation to this municipalization resolution and the various pathways in the feasibility study, it's likely insufficient when applied to other potential policies, programs, and projects related to A20. And so one of the things that I would ask the commission to consider is, and maybe this can be handled by council members. I mean, in principle, I would vote for this, but I just want to raise the point. If it needs to be in every single resolution, then maybe the language that we've outlined in these criteria and principles needs to somehow be strengthened. And then all we need to do is one time refer to this as a general statement. And as other people have said, it's also included in the A20 plan. I mean, that doesn't preclude us from taking values that are particularly important to us and repeating them. It just seems that it's a little bit messier of a way to do it. So I just was referred to very early on by Commissioner George that I had sent this email, and that was the email that I sent to them. Are there any other comments before we take a vote? Okay, no other comments. So I'm going to take a roll call vote. And I have one question, Missy, could you scroll down to this again? The question that I have is, should it appear here at the end, or should it appear earlier? If it appears at the end, then the punctuation has to change slightly, where we need to put an and at the end of SCU with a semicolon preceding that, and then we need to put a period at the end of this.
To the best of my knowledge, there wasn't a recommendation on placement. Is that correct?
That's, as far as I know, there was not either.
Just move it up.
Yeah. So if we move it up, then we just put an and at the end of city and we move it up.
Are we going to debate where we're putting it?
Oh,
I would say put it before. Well, it can be anywhere because it applies. Actually, it applies to everything. It applies also to the SCU, I suppose. So maybe it should stay at the end.
And that was the rationale. How did I just change the?
Just change the punctuation then.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So SCU semicolon and
then we don't need the and
then
we don't actually use it in the resolutions. If we want it, we can have it, but
okay.
We don't use them.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna Mark, did you have an additional comment, or is this
that was just my question? Are we going to move this or not, and do we need a motion to move it? But if we're going to keep it here, then let's vote. Let's just vote.
Okay, good. So I'm going to take the roll call. You appear on my screen a little bit differently. So I'll go ahead through as I see you. Commissioner Garber? No. Is that correct?
Yes, this is correct. No.
Okay. Commissioner Levin?
Yes.
Commissioner Calvin Garcia?
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Commissioner Juneau?
Yes.
Commissioner Overpeck?
Yes.
Commissioner McCumber?
Yes.
Councilmember Adina?
Yes.
Commissioner Clevey?
Yes.
Commissioner George?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. So, I think we have maybe one more vote. I don't know, somebody help me here, that we approve the entire resolution now as it stands. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Yep, okay, good. Any other closing remarks by anybody before we take that vote? Seeing no hands. We already have a motion, so I'm going to go ahead and take the roll call. Commissioner Garber, are you in favor of voting for the entire document as it currently stands?
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner Levin?
Yes.
Commissioner Calvin Garcia?
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Commissioner Juneau?
Yes.
Commissioner Overpeck?
Yes.
Commissioner McCumber?
Yes.
Commissioner Redina?
Yes.
Commissioner Clevey?
Yes.
Commissioner George?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. We have a unanimous vote. Thank you, everybody, for all of your work on this and all of your patience. And thank you for everybody in the public that weighed in on this as well. So we have one other major agenda point. We got my agenda here. And that is a resolution recognizing the Downtown Development Authority for its decarbonization and sustainability measures. This is posted on Legistar, and this would be a first reading. So if we can pull that up. While you're doing that, I would like to just give a little bit of background on this. This resolution was proposed by Dave Conkle. I think Dave Conkle is known to many of us. He was the former Ann Arbor Energy Office Director, and he is currently on the board of GLREA, and he calls himself a renewable energy mentor. And he met with Commissioner Calvin Garcia and me late this summer after he presented in one of our meetings, and he brought up the idea of recognizing the DDA for all the work that it's done in relation to energy matters and sustainability matters, transportation, etc. And so he drafted this that you now see on your screen. I made some revisions. I think Commissioner Calvin Garcia did as well. We discussed those. He reviewed them, as did staff. And this is the resolution that we would like to have you consider. I hope that people have read through it, and so I would like to have a motion.
I motion that we accept this resolution.
Okay.
Endorses.
Motion by Commissioner Clevey. Do we have a second for discussion?
Second.
From Commissioner McCoy. Since this is a first reading and it's a long meeting, and we've endured many long meetings, I don't plan to read through all of this. You can see what it does is it basically starts out with some framing and then goes through step by step, where with as clauses, these are all chronological, going back to 2006 and actions taken then there may well have been actions before that, but these are the ones that we were able to pull together, starting again with Dave Conco's input, and then adding a few other things. And Missy, if you can just scroll through this, so you can see that, you know, we were addressing everything from LED lighting to solar at the farmers market, providing money for energy efficiency grants, and then doing things like at the end EV charging, and then also biking lanes. That's something that's been done recently. And so what we did add in the end, as you can see, there's something that's struck through. So this will be proposed basically with the strike through, with the minor modification here, saying basically they're decarbonization, environmental sustainability measures. And I think one thing that we would also strike is this very last resolve clause, which we added, but since then council has already approved this, and so I don't think need to encourage city council to support something that they've already supported and approved. So that's the content of the resolution. And again, anyone want to comment on this? We can either comment tonight or take comments a month from now. Well, it actually would not be in our next meeting because it's a working session. We'll get to that later. It would be considered then for a second reading and vote in our February meeting. Commissioner Clevey.
Can we waive the voting at the February meeting and simply vote on this tonight? Can we waive that requirement? And if so, I motion that we waive that requirement and vote on it now.
That's fine with me. Is this controversial from anybody's perspective? Not seeing any negative or affirmative head shakes that it's controversial. So what I would offer then as a friendly amendment is that we strike through what we currently see as blue highlighted. And Missy's already made the change, or we have the change where it says and then a period at the end of the last resolve clause that's now shown there. So any other comments? If not, then we'll also take a roll call vote on this and get this approved, and then maybe we can also have someone from the DDA come and recognize them at our next meeting.
Nice.
Great. So I'm going to go through Commissioner Garber.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy.
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yes.
Commissioner Juneau. Commissioner Overpeck.
Yes.
Commissioner Cumber.
Yes.
Councilmember Adina.
Yes.
Commissioner Clevey.
Yes.
Commissioner Colin Garcia.
Yes.
Commissioner George.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. So the resolution passes. And again,
Commissioner,
thanks to
Chair Murphy, I'd just like to say congratulations. I think you and Vice Chair Garcia did a great job on this, along with Missy. So good job. This is the kind of stuff we need to be doing more of.
Right. And I think to take that a step further, really this is in recognition of what the DDA has done. The DDA takes a lot of flack for a lot of things, but the DDA has also done some really good things when it comes to climate action and environmental sustainability more broadly. So our thanks goes out to the DDA.
I'd also like to thank Dave Conco for all his work. That really was a massive contributor to all of this as well.
Indeed. Indeed. Thanks, Dave, if he's listening in. So this now takes us to the next point on our agenda, which is OSI reports and news from commissioners. So we'll start with OSI.
Thanks, Chair Mirsky. As always, a lot going on. We are working on our newsletter for January, and I think that'll be kind of the next big smattering. I will tell you it's coming in at 6 to 7 pages. So just to give you a sense, there's a lot of moving parts. Some exciting things to share. I'm sure folks know on last Monday night, Council voted to put a community climate action millage on the ballot in November. That'll be November 8th. Also, last Monday, or this most recent Monday, which was just yesterday, I don't understand time sometimes, we had the kickoff to the budget presentation. So we presented kind of where we are. We do have a 2-year budget process. So 23 budget really is mostly baked. We'll be making some modifications based on 4 pillars presented by our new city administrator, Mr. Dahoney. And one of the pillars as a prioritization as presented by him was sustainability. So it's really exciting to see that centered in the work. We pitched a few potential projects, including everything from bringing online our next 2 resilience hubs to making a down payment in the landfill solar project to have a low income offering where we could help residents actually immediately, energy burdened residents immediately start saving money by subscribing to that. And then of course, getting a credit, which would further lower their bills. So some exciting projects, and I can send the commission details on the webinar that happened last night. Also want to share, we have out for public comment in January. You'll have the opportunity to participate via survey, but also in public meetings about how the city should invest the American Rescue Plan funding, about $24 million coming in. And one of the projects in the kind of suite for consideration is solar at municipal facilities. We've been designing with 2 installers at 19 different city sites. Solar, rooftop solar, ground mounted and carport solar. It's over 4 megawatts of solar potential that could come online. And that's one of the projects that we might, the public has a chance to kind of weigh in on and see the benefit for. I'll share for anyone who is listening, one of the things we're excited about from that project, not only does of course help us advance our clean energy and climate goals, but it frees up recurring dollars in the general fund and in other funds that can be invested in other things. And that's something we don't regularly get. Often we kind of take on something and it has lots of values, but it doesn't get recurring savings. So that would be 25 years of recurring savings to invest in other community priorities that we have.
Missy, what's the status? The RFP for those issued already, and are we waiting for responses, or what's the status?
We're in design. No, design's done for those. That's how we know the pricing for them.
Okay.
So now we're just we're securing the funding, whether we're going to do that through a PPA or whether we're going to do that through a direct buy, which when we started the project, a direct buy wasn't really possible, but with American Rescue Plan funding, it could be, which is sort of an exciting development that's happened. We've also joined another.
Could you stop screen sharing so that I don't know that we need to review see this document anymore?
There's too many moving parts. Thanks for that. Notes going everywhere over here. Yeah, for sure. Some other things going on. We joined an electrification cohort. We were just accepted into that through RMI, formerly Rocky Mountain Institute, with some other cities around the country. Really exciting to see that take off. We're stealing profusely from our peers in Ithaca. We have been in conversation with them in Portland, Maine, who's actually doing some really extraordinary work as well. I'm sure some of you have seen some of the New York Times pieces on Ithaca. Don't worry, I backfilled them as soon as I saw those as well. Some really exciting stuff happening about unlocking private capital to help with building electrification. So a few other things to flag. I recognize there's a lot, but that's kind of what we do over here. Last Monday, Council also approved the purchase of our second electric refuse truck and the receiving of grants to support both the first and the second. I'm going to do a special call out to Simi Barr and to Matt Kohanek, the Director of Fleet and Facilities. They worked incredibly hard to secure these 2 grants, one from the state, one is part of a coalition through the American Lung Association. Almost $1 million in grant funding is going to come to help make those 2 trucks possible and to support the charging infrastructure for them. So really hard work that often happens. It took a lot of time to pull together, but congratulations to that team. Once again, no meeting is complete without recognizing Julie Roth, who continues to rock the Solar Ice program. I just saw she came back on. Tonight she was recognized by the Sierra Club for her work. And she's tireless. We just passed 2.3 megawatts through the Solar Ice program, and we are not slowing down in terms of the number of people that are signing up for events. We're scheduled into February at this point. If you know anyone that's interested in sharing their solar stories, we continue to have a monthly event called the Ann Arbor Solar Stories in partnership with GLREA, and that is very successful. I also want to recognize the team at OSI and thank Mr. Clevey on the line. Thanks to, I believe, I don't know this for sure, but I think his support and advocacy, the office was recognized with an exemplary project award for our work on the sustainable energy utility. So I want to thank everyone for their work to support that. Last few updates. It is true, council approved a contract, a few different contracts, quite complicated, but effectively the product is we're working with DDA to get 80 more chargers in the downtown area. Really exciting. They'll be connected chargers. We'll finally be able to do surge pricing, which is really important. We can't have cars sitting in a spot when they're fully charged, eating up limited parking. We have more technology available and 80 new chargers. Just to give perspective, we have a total of 30. So we just massively increased the amount of charging infrastructure we're going to have in the downtown. And we're kicking off in the new year, we're in active recruitment, a multi-family charging pilot, because we know that's a tricky place to figure out how to do charging infrastructure. So we've been in conversation thinking about everything from the right of way and where we put chargers, of course, on private property where you have a split incentive. A property owner who may not have an electric vehicle, but tenants who might, especially with so many renters. If you know anyone that's interested, struggling with this topic, or perhaps thinking about purchasing an EV but needs their facility to have charging infrastructure, please let us know. I think the last one I want to close with is my favorite. You can't have favorites. We can't have favorite children. It's one I love maybe slightly more than others, and it's our work in Bryant. And I want to share that work continues to just cut at the heart of everything we do in the office. We are about to submit a DOE LEAP grant for technical assistance in that neighborhood, just to kind of ground the commission and our members of the public. This is a project that we've been working on for over a year with Community Action Network, the Bryant Community Center, and the residents of the Bryant neighborhood to make them the first decarbonized neighborhood in the Midwest, potentially in the US. And it's really centering the needs of the residents, their desires, their aspirations. Sometimes that manifests in work we're doing on a food forest, actually in the park. And sometimes it manifests in home energy assessments, which is what we're doing right now. And that continues just to be a really deep, meaningful project. The goal is to do assessments and then to be able to scale the kinds of support that the neighborhoods need, the neighbors need, because the housing stock is very, very similar. It was built by the same developer. There really are only two styles of houses, so we're able to extrapolate out through that. And yeah.
Could you pause there? It looks like we have two commissioners that have questions or comments about that specifically. Commissioner Calvin Garcia, did you want to comment? And then Councilmember Adina.
Okay, so I need to add my little chit to your vote on favorite project. Sounds super cool, very, very exciting. So what's the scope on the Bryant project? Like how many houses, how far?
About 265 houses. And I know we'll get to the future agenda items, but this is a project I'd love to bring the project partners in and give you a presentation. All the money that we've raised stays in the neighborhood to hire residents to do this work and to support the residents in designing these projects. And I was just going to round out by saying, so we won a grant from the McKnight Foundation. We won an EPA Region 5 grant to support this morning. We just had a check-in with McKnight. They asked us to resubmit for more funding. So fingers crossed that materializes. And then the DOE grant we will be submitting tomorrow afternoon is to do the microgrid assessment. So if the SEU takes off, this is the first neighborhood that we want to do that work in. So we
All
want to
265 homes?
All 265 homes.
For the microgrid.
You named it, girl.
And then all the energy efficiency and everything?
Part of it, yep. Part of it would be, so we call it reform,
Okay.
RE4, 4 E's, stands for renewable energy, energy efficiency, energy storage, electrification, and the last one is equity movement. So it's how you pair all of those things in a way that fixes the market and it corrects what the market's not doing. So we need to reform our system, and this is what we're trying to do in Bryant.
Fantastic. It's so exciting.
So I would love to present and bring maybe Derek and Sky and Crystal and others from the project in to kind of talk about that. So I think I'll stop there. A few things going on over there.
That's awesome, Missy. Great job. Congratulations to your team. I'll move first to council members. There were some great things that passed the last council meeting, and then move from there to comments from commissioners.
Thanks. I can jump in quick. I was actually raising my hand to comment on something, but I do want to. It was the perfect timing because as a resident of the Bryant neighborhood, the work that OSI is doing in the neighborhood is near and dear to my heart as well. And so I am just very grateful and want to heap more praise onto the entire staff because not just staff, but also community members who have been rallying around OSI and coming and doing the work here in the neighborhood. And it's really just great to see in partnership with the community center as well. But I also just wanted to, we have wrapped up tonight some pretty monumental work and just wanted to note that as well and thank everybody for their work on it. The resolution was obviously a long process, a very deliberative process, sometimes heated process. And so I just want to thank everybody for their continued work on it. I want to thank community members who weighed in and all of the staff for the time that they've invested into it, and also just kind of set some expectations. I don't expect that this will be on our next council meeting, which is just a few days away. And so I think that's just important to note that Councilmember Briggs and I will surely call attention to the fact that this passed and encourage our colleagues to read the resolution. And we will likely bring something forward together early in the new year to bring this before council. But I just wanted to set that expectation for community members who are listening and for members of this body as well, that obviously we want to get this moving, but we also have to have time to get the council resolution ready and bring it before the body. But we will definitely call attention at the next meeting. And thanks again, everybody, for your work on this. I know this has been a long time with a lot of hours put into it. So thank you, everybody.
Anything to add, Councilmember Briggs? Okay, great. Updates from commissioners. Yeah, I thought so. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a moment and talk about Missy mentioned it. Just want to briefly talk about that. The Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association, we are a statewide industry organization, and we have members in just about every community in the state. And we do annual awards. Our annual meeting was December 6th, and we do a series of awards each year to identify the most meritorious project going on in the year, but more importantly, to identify projects that can be replicated in other communities, and to look where we can really shine light on meritorious projects in environmental justice, women leaders, et cetera. This year we gave the Meritorious Award to Missy for the work on the Sustainability Energy Utility. She's a hard worker and it's a wonderful project, but she got the award because the SEU is replicable across Michigan. And as much as I agree with AAPP that Ann Arbor certainly can afford to municipalize if that's the way we want to do it, but the municipalization is grossly out of reach for the vast majority of communities in the state. And the SEU is a model that could be adopted with an ordinance by any community. And indeed, since Missy's presentation at our meeting, we've got about 15 communities that have asked about it. And our award was to shine a light on her good work there. So we gave her the Leadership Award this year. Last year, we actually gave Galen Hardy the award for the Ambassador Program, which we also believe is a great way to embed sustainability deep into the fabric of the community. And since then, we've got 5 other communities working with GLREA through our Solarize program we're doing with Julie on a statewide basis to include the Ambassador Program too. So Ann Arbor's doing great stuff. We see it, what's going on here, but where I sit, we're looking at Ann Arbor and saying, wow, let's do this in Sheboygan. Let's do this in in Benzie County. Let's do it all over the place. And the good news is there's lots of interest in that way. So congratulations to Missy, and it was a pleasure to be able to recognize her.
Councilmember Briggs, and then Commissioner Overpeck after that.
Yeah, my apologies. I guess I'm getting groggy. Dr. Stoltz mentioned the millage moving forward, but I don't think she mentioned the fact that the Energy Commission's low carbon construction resolution was unanimously passed as well at the end of the night. So many thanks to Energy Commission for bringing that forward, and also Chair Mursky for helping to make sure it got to council. So thanks for everybody's work on that in the community as well.
Commissioner Overpeck.
Yes, so I'm a climate scientist, which you probably all know, and I'm really into understanding positive feedbacks. In some cases, they accelerate bad things, such as we just learned this week, maybe Antarctic ice sheet disintegration. But sometimes they accelerate good things. And I'm on the Governor's Climate Solutions Council, and we're getting close to our report that we delivered to the governor, and then it'll be open for public comment and stuff like that. And I urge everyone to pay attention. But one thing that I've been harping on in a very low-key way, but nonetheless still harping, is it would be nice if this plan had in it some positive feedbacks that would really help get the attention of colleagues across the country and identify, essentially place us as a really up and coming carbon neutrality state. And hopefully that would lead to more innovation, more people wanting to move here who do that kind of thing, industry and stuff that is clean tech. And you can think of a whole bunch of reasons why this would be good, but we have to start convincing our fellow citizens that we got to move fast. And so we need some things that really demonstrate that we move fast. So what I'd like to ask all of you, particularly Missy probably, but I know there's some other real gurus here, is what might we suggest to the governor's team that she could do, they could do, to really enhance our ability in Ann Arbor. And I like Mark's comment, we got to find out ways to not just work in Ann Arbor, but to be able to transfer our knowledge, our successes throughout Michigan. What would be some things the governor could do that in the team that they have not yet done that they could do fairly easily? It may be hard, but the big thing is what should be the goals to really, so that we could accelerate what's happening in Ann Arbor and hopefully accelerate what's happening in other communities and really show the rest of the country that this is the happening place for carbon neutrality. And I don't need the answer now because I know some people are groggy, but I would love to have feedback on that. And I will, I'll push pretty hard for it.
I have a request. Could you send us a reminder, and then maybe that's something we can consider in our work session and do some brainstorming. We're going to have a work session in our January meeting. That's on the 11th. We'll talk about that later. But is that acceptable from a timing perspective that we think about that collectively and provide feedback, or is that getting too late for some reason?
No, I think I'm trying to think. I think it's okay. I mean, better late, yeah, I think that'll be all right. It's a little late, but, don't worry about it.
Well, that doesn't prevent anybody from reaching out and passing on great ideas to.
It allows us to, the other thing is if we all do it together and brainstorm, I love that idea because I have to understand these things if I'm going to advocate for them. And I'm behind the 8 ball compared to some of you. It would also, there'll be public comment, probably starting a little after that. So we could really sort of gang up on them. And, I can work from the council, and then members of this team could also work as, public commenters.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Klebe.
I think I love that stuff, Dr. Taylor, and I think that's great. I'd encourage you to talk to Missy because I know that there's some SEU questions that we remain unanswered at the state level, and having the governor embrace that as a way to move the ball quickly into these communities, I think would be a great thing. So I encourage you to talk to her about that too.
Yeah, that's why I highlighted in the beginning. I think Missy's the primary source, and she's nodding, which makes my day or night, as the case may be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? I have a few, but go ahead if anybody else. Any other, raise your hand. So just a few quick things from my side. The Ann Arbor lighting ordinance, the group that worked on that, along with the Stark Skies people, has met twice with the University of Michigan and planted some seeds that the University of Michigan hopefully adopt key elements of that. They already have in some regards, but there's other areas where there could be improvements with their internal specifications. And I think people know that the university doesn't have to follow the Ann Arbor's Unified Development Code. So we're working on that. In those and other meetings, I learned that according to the recommendation in the Presidential Commission on Carbon Neutrality, the university is going to be starting a review of its campus planning activity. And that is going to start to with some public engagement in the beginning of next year. And I think maybe it's important for us also to think about what kinds of things are important from a climate perspective, directly and indirectly, that we might want to weigh in on, possibly just individually by offering comments, but possibly also collectively through a resolution that might be a little bit more powerful. And I think it might be good for us to think about that going forward. And then one other thing, I didn't clear this with Missy, but I want to offer just a little teaser, and that is a group of us have been meeting with regards to energy concierge services, and we found an online service that really we think is a great platform, and it's very inexpensive, offered by a nonprofit that will at least offer online kinds of energy concierge services. And so maybe also for an agenda item next year, once we have some things hammered down, we're going to have a full demo coming up here soon, and it looks really promising. We run into a bunch of dead ends, either for cost or performance reasons, but it's looking pretty interesting. I see Carleen has some comments, and then go back to Commissioner Overpeck too. Oh, Carleen, did you have anything? No.
So it's just wanted to give a quick update on what the Transportation Electrification Committee. Is this a good time, John, just to throw out a couple of comments? I'm saying that because you also mentioned what's going on with the lighting ordinance.
Go ahead, since you have. I mean, the next is work group updates, but I think you have the floor already, so let's go ahead and then we'll continue with that after Commissioner Peck's.
Great. Okay, so you mentioned, John, the Commissioner Murphy, the lighting ordinance, and so along with that, the city's engineering department is also working on updating what's known as the Orange Book, which is basically the design, building, and construction guidebook for the city and city properties. And so part of what the Transportation Electrification Committee is doing is that we're offering recommendations for inclusion in this guidebook for what is necessary to install street side electric vehicle parking or electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So that's something that we're providing support for. Also, we are providing support for what Missy also talked about with electric vehicle charging at multi-unit dwellings, giving resources to Simi Barr, who's the lead on that. And I just wanted to give you a quick update on some of the things that we're working on. As far as the concierge service is concerned, we're going to be hopefully helping to compile some resources to help folks when they are looking at installing electric vehicle charging on their properties as well. And that's it for my update.
Heck.
Yeah, I'd like if you could tell me, John, a little more about what you want the university to do. I don't understand this ordinance yet, and we don't have to do that now, but I can sort of maybe make some headway.
Okay, I'll get back with you. We've met with Drew Horning and Lydia, and then we had a second meeting with Andy Berkey, Sue Gott, and someone from governmental relations.
Excellent.
And
Chris
another
Cole?
meeting is planned and committed to, not date-wise, but in the late spring, around March or around May.
Okay.
But
I can sort of gin things up, maybe within campus
That would be
leadership.
That would be great. It's always good to gin things up.
We're implementing also tomorrow, as of like this week, we're implementing a $25 million revolving carbon neutrality fund for all units on campus. So there's going to be some decent amount of money available to start doing things more aggressively. And you didn't hear it from me, and I could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure the campus electric campus connector idea is gaining steam again. That will connect the North Campus with the main campus and maybe down to the athletic campus. And I think that's another good thing for Missy to know, because that means we got to be ready to figure out how it connects with the city's mass transit. And I know quite a bit of thinking was done on that early on, back when we were in the early days of the PCCN, but I don't know where it stands now. But I just have this hunch that it's going to be it's going to happen.
Can I just share something with you and a concern that I have? I don't know if there's anybody else that has any influence on the university. I think many of you saw probably this announcement about the Detroit Center for Innovation that was announced. And I know there's a number of concerns with gentrification and things like that, but staying within the energy range. I noticed that there was not a single mention of anything related to the building. If you look at it, there's a ton of glazing. We all know glazing means high heat gain and heat losses. It means it's not a very energy efficient envelope. It didn't say anything about whether it's an all electric building. It didn't say anything about geothermal, net zero ready. There was nothing about any kinds of certifications, and it's just concerning to me that the university continues to build lots of buildings. And I know that there's new building standards that are being worked on, but I'm hoping that these new major construction projects are taking into consideration the recommendations of the PCCN. Another thing that's concerning to me is that the university continues to say they're going to tear down the Fleming Administration Building. There's a hell of a lot of embodied energy in that building. And it seems to me that somebody should be thinking about engaging students or somebody else to think about repurposing that building and renovating it instead of gutting the whole thing and sending it to landfill. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense to me. So if anybody has any influence with anybody within the university, please pull on your leash a little bit, or whatever it is that you can pull on.
I'll definitely, people hate that building, and it's pretty universal. It's not a fun building to be in at all. And it's energy efficient because the windows are so teeny, maybe. But all the buildings built, I think the buildings being built, not the ones that are being, that were planned, years ago, like the new medical tower, but the new ones going forward. And the medical tower is being, upgraded in terms of what it will be able to do, but it's still old school. But there is geothermal going on one of the new buildings on North Campus. And the DCI, the Detroit Center for Innovation, I'm pretty sure it's going to be net zero.
Great. I mean, with the Fleming Administration Building, I mean, that building could be gutted and you could still save a hell of a lot of embodied energy that's in it. So, but that's a discussion. That's a rabbit hole.
I'm not sure I get your drift there. You could gut it and recycle it, you mean, or?
No, repurpose it. I mean, how else could it be? I mean, you could put an atrium down the middle. I don't know what you could do, but it seems to me you should turn a bunch of students loose on what you could do so that no matter what you do, whether it's tearing it down or whether it's repurposing it or using it for a completely different kinds of purpose, that it be considered from that perspective. So
To be a computer center, it's perfectly ideal to house computers.
yeah, that's true.
For Bitcoin.
Although that's all done in the cloud these days, but whatever.
Well, the cloud,
maybe.
yeah, but the cloud has
The
computers.
cloud has
somewhere.
servers somewhere too, I know.
Yeah, but right. Could
But
be a
that
server
server's
That's
farm.
not that mysterious.
Okay, any other updates from anybody else? We are now back at public input, and I'll just read my little spiel here. This is an opportunity again for persons to speak up for up to 3 minutes. If you're watching on CTN, please call 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 and enter the meeting ID 937-6751-6819. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and the video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. To raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. Or actually, I guess Missy provides a verbal prompt. And when speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute anything that might be in the background. And then finally, please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments.
Caller ending in 041.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Sean Higgins from Ward 4. I wanted to express my appreciation for all of you folks on the Energy Commission for putting forward the resolution that was discussed in the beginning of the meeting. I think moving towards a feasibility study for a municipal utility and an SEU are, great positive things for the city. I wanted to give a couple points that I sort of hope the city council members in the group consider going forward. The first is that, the cities in Michigan that have municipalities have had them for, largely over a century and have accrued a lot of revenue over that time. And if for a municipal feasibility study, there's a big difference between one that, say, looks over the scale of 20 years and one that looks over the scale of 10 years. I think that this idea is a change that could last a long time in Ann Arbor and could accrue a lot of revenue and value to the city over time, but any feasibility study into it would have to take that sort of long-term view or perspective. I also wanted to sort of reflect on, a lot of callers at the beginning of the meeting expressed that, an SEU isn't really capable of getting to 100% of our generation. In a previous meeting, a sort of report from Google was cited that basically said that solar production potential was sort of upwards of 400 megawatts potentially in Ann Arbor. My background as someone that, studied computer vision algorithms in grad school here in Ann Arbor, I think whether it's the fact that that study doesn't really consider economic costs, whether it's, potential missing obstructions on roofs, consideration of roofs that are northward or eastward facing, I think there are a lot of reasons to sort of be skeptical and consider that, that sort of estimate of solar roof potential in the city may be a gross overestimate. I'd love for it to be true that, Ann Arbor could get all of its power from just putting solar panels on rooftops, but I don't see the evidence for that to be the case, and I don't think that study is sort of sufficient to suggest it.
30 seconds.
Which is why I think municipalization, and in particular the purchase power agreements and distribution supplied by it are so important for the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller ending in 245. Caller ending in 245, you can unmute.
Okay. Hello, this is Kathleen Murphy again, 315 Linda Vista Street, Ann Arbor. And I'm just calling to say that I want to thank you, John Mursky, and all the commissioners for the seriousness with which you've taken on this issue. And it's been great working with you. I've learned a whole lot as we've gone through these considerations for the last year. And I think this resolution really could take us forward fighting the climate crisis. It's a little step forward for the planet. So I thank you very much.
Thanks for sticking with us.
That's all, Chair Mursky.
That's all? Okay, great. So that just leaves items for the next agenda and adjournment. Our next meeting, as I mentioned, is on January 11th. Can anyone confirm that we're still meeting virtually? Yes. Okay.
We are 100% virtual. Yep.
Okay, that's what I thought. So we have agreed that it's going to be a work session. I think we mentioned that before, but Missy and Carleen and I had a meeting about a week ago and confirmed that we're going to do that. We're going to focus on the workings of the commission topics for the next year. And in order to prepare for that, the three of us worked on a survey that we will be sending out in roughly the next 24 hours. It asks a little bit in the rearview mirror, what are your thoughts on what we've done the past year? And then it also asks several questions about what are priority topics for you going forward and things like that. And I'm going to ask that you respond to that within a week. If you don't do it within a week, we're probably not going to do it at all. And then we're going to get really into the holidays. And we don't want to be sending out 25 reminders because we gave you 5 weeks or 4 weeks to answer. So please be on the watch for that. We'll maybe send out one reminder after a couple of days, just so it stays near the top of your in basket. It's going to be an anonymous survey, and we will compile and share those results with all of you. Of course, when we are in the working session, we hope that that prompts a lot of open discussion. And of course, at that time, people can share their specific comments from the survey if they want to do so, but they don't need to. I think it'll be instructive, hopefully, for all of us. And then I'd just like to open things up for additional comments by Carleen and Missy, and then for any other comments about items for future agendas. One thing that Missy mentioned that I noted, and she will certainly keep track of, is presentation on Bryant. But Missy and Carleen, did you want to say anything else about the planning or the work session right now? We'll be working on details of the agenda and put some structure to it once we have the survey results back.
I think just having, please answer the survey completely. It would be great. Really valuable.
Yep. Be frank with your comments and assessments. That'll help us all. I think what we want to do is help reach the goals of A20 and help Missy and her staff and to be as efficient and effective as they and we can be together. And hopefully this will help us do that. Did anybody else want to bring up ideas for the work session or for future meeting topics that we should capture and be aware of going forward? Okay, so I would suggest we all take a copy that we probably printed out of the resolution that we passed tonight, put a bow around it, put it under your Christmas tree, and be glad that we've got a bunch of new things that we can tackle going forward. Once the feasibility study results are back, I'm sure we're going to have a lot of discussions again on the topic, but that was, I think, certainly a present for all of us to get through this. And it was a pleasure working with everybody on it. And It's been a pleasure working with all of you over the past year. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season and get in some good R&R. And I don't know if we're going to have a white Christmas, given temperatures are 30 degrees above normal, but we'll hope for that. And I hope that you, like I said, you all have a wonderful time, and I look forward to seeing you all in the new year. So with that, the meeting is adjourned. It is 8:56 or 50.
Need a motion to adjourn.
Pardon me?
You need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I need a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Ah, good point. Thank you. Got a bunch of seconds. Member and Councilmember Radina. So do we take a vote on adjournment? No. Okay. So we have plenty of seconds, and therefore the meeting is adjourned. Thanks very much. Good night, everybody.
Good night.